The big name we've all been wondering about. Where is he going to land? Who's he going to sign with? For a brief moment, the Mariners were part of that equation, but then it was narrowed down to 3 teams, and Roki Sasaki has made his choice. And God love the L.A. Dodgers. Nice to see them finally convince somebody to sign with them. It's beautiful. And here to talk about all of it, he's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Our buddy Jon Morosi is with us. How are you?
Score one for the underdogs, my friend. Somehow, in a gigantic upset, the Dodgers have claimed the prize free agent.
Was that sort of the foregone conclusion that it's I saw the story earlier today that the Blue Jays were able to work out a deal where they acquired $2 million for international money to sort of bolster their case for Sasaki. So it looked like, all right, maybe this is going to come down to the wire, but the Dodgers win again.
The Dodgers win again. They win on the field, they win off the field, and now they've got, I think, one of the more prized prospects we have seen come in. Now, I'm using the word prospect deliberately because he is 23. He does still have, I think, some polishing to do with refining his pitches, but he has an overwhelming repertoire. And we have seen him throw 100 miles an hour. This stuff is electrifying. And he also is now stepping in to a team in the Dodgers that a couple assets you would say they have beyond the financial resources. Number one, they've got the very recent concept. They've proven that they can bring in a pitcher from Japan in the case of Yamamoto, and in year one, he finds a lot of success and comfort. And indeed, he helped them win the World Series. So Yamamoto is able to immediately come in and have success. There's a template there for Sasaki to follow. The second part of it is, and I talked about this a moment ago on MLB Network TV, that Sasaki is more of an introvert than Yamamoto is, and that it may indeed appeal to him that he is, yes, in a major media market. We know that. But he is one of the Dodgers superstars. If he were to go to Seattle, he'd probably be right there with Julio on all the promotional materials. If he goes to Toronto, he's right there with Vladdy. It's probably the two of them. If he goes to San Diego, he's probably right there with Tatis and Machado. He is arguably the face of the team that he goes to. With the Dodgers, among the guys that are pitching, you could argue that Kershaw signs back. He's somewhere among the top 2 along with Ohtani. Yamamoto already helped them win a World Series. Blake Snell's got 2 Cy Youngs. And here's Sasaki. So they've got, I think that as someone, you might say, why would someone who's an introvert want to go to the second biggest media market in our country? But I think the answer is he is by far not the biggest name on the team. And I think that in some small way appeals to him.
JP, by the way, it looks like you just shaved.
The beard is gone.
Very clean.
It's been a big topic. My wife, I got to be honest, she's not thrilled with this decision. But I've said that. Listen, I had the All-American hockey game last night that I did here in Michigan. Got the Hall of Fame next week in Cooperstown. I got Wyman and Bob tonight. I got to class it up for at least a week.
Absolutely.
I said the girl might come back, but for our new video stream on the show, I got to make sure that it's professional. I got a tie for you guys tonight. I mean, don't ever say that I have a lack of seriousness when it comes to the commitment that I have for this program.
You see how seriously we took it with our wardrobe too.
Yeah, I have free stuff. Is typically about 75% of my wardrobe is free. But hey, this is probably the last we should talk about the Dodgers. But is Ohtani going to be
richer, and it just ensures that these other teams don't have an opportunity or a shot at the title, so to speak? I mean, basically, if the Dodgers don't win the World Series, it's going to be considered a disappointment unless they suffer major injuries to key players. But do you look at this as a broken system that needs to be adjusted with either a salary cap, salary floor? This is, this conversation comes up when the rich teams go out there and get better by spending more money.
Well, it's interesting. I look at this in this particular instance, and I understand the fan reaction here. I understand why it has become this hot button issue. This, of course, is a minor league deal for under $10 million. And so this is one case where he chose not because of the money, at least ostensibly directly. Now, indirectly, of course, there is a financial piece of this because the Dodgers are appealing as a place to go expressly because they've spent so much money before. When they laid out $1 billion to bring in Ohtani and Yamamoto a year ago, that's pretty good proof of concept that they will spend whatever they want whenever they need to put the best team on the field. So you're right. I mean, this is just a continuation, even though it's a relatively small number in baseball terms, it is a residue of their financial might, without question. I would point out that we're still at a point in baseball where we have not had a repeat champion in a quarter century. So if you had seen the Dodgers reel off 5 championships in a row, maybe I would have a little different answer. I do think that competitively, there are teams that are committed to spending what it takes to compete and those that are not. And we could argue that those that are not is a concerningly growing number year by year. This will, of course, all get settled out in the course of bargaining. And I also think that there are some free agents that certainly had opportunities to sign with other big market teams and have turned them down. Reports say Pete Alonso had something in the range of $30 million a year, maybe less, offered to him, according to the New York Post, by the New York Mets. I don't think anybody's going to say that the Mets offering him $30 million a year is residue of a broken system. However, I get what you're saying. The Dodgers have now set themselves up to be, they're the Miami Heat when LeBron and Bosh and Wade signed there. They're the Golden State Warriors of a certain era with KD. You go name the teams that have gotten stronger and assembled stars, whether it's the Chiefs in the NFL. Every other sport has a salary cap that forces them to make tough decisions. And you're right, the Dodgers in this run, how many really tough, agonizing calls have they had to make? When your owner is willing to keep spending, you don't really have those decisions, at least not to that extent. So they're playing on a level that really no one else can right now, or at least no one else is, I should say. And it's a matter of one of two things has to happen. Other teams have to find different ways to beat them, or at some point down the line, the overall infrastructure and spending habits of the industry will have to change, either by a cap, floor, whatever you want to call it. But there will need to be some more artificial management of the way that this thing is going.
Hey, JP, with Julio, I was just going through like his month-to-month numbers over the last 3 years, and I just the one that really stands out to me, and I wonder if it's, I don't want to say it's simple, but like, maybe this is what he needs to take that next step, is just to even out his game. Because I'm looking at June, 26 games, and then in September he played 26 games. And if you look in June, he was batting .206, and you go to September, 328. So I mean, it seems like it's that way almost every year for Julio Rodriguez. So, is that maybe something that, maybe that's just shows youth, or, too much emotion involved or whatever? Is that the one thing that kind of stands out to you, that like this is how he becomes a better player?
I think with younger players, there is always a certain amount of variability. And by the way, I think it's interesting that Sasaki and Julio are basically the same age. And of course, Julio's already had a pretty extended run in the major leagues and some pretty good success already. And here comes Sasaki at the same age that he is. Yeah. I do think that evening things out with respect to that the commitment and the routine and all the day-to-day that it takes to be great every single year, that's what I've observed in why Freddie Freeman is great, why Mookie Betts is great. It was interesting. I talked recently with Morgan Ensberg, who played with Hall of Fame closers Hoffman and Rivera, and also Billy Wagner, who might get elected next week. And Morgan's statement to me was they're different pitchers, but their preparation, their consistency day to day was always the same. And what I wonder with Julio, and again, it's just a question that I'm asking, I don't know the answer to it, is he at that peak level of day-to-day consistency about the work, really 12 months out of the year, because that's what it takes now, to then give you the best chance to replicate consistent results for 6 months of the regular season and then the playoffs? And I don't know the answer to that question. And I think that that can come from the organization. That can come from a veteran. You think about what Mike Sweeney did for the Mariners once upon a time, about the way that Mike worked, and that team overachieved based on talent when he was around to kind of help them get going. But ultimately, it's got to come from Julio himself, and no longer is the financial reward part of it. That's done. That's already he's all set forever. And so I think that now it has to become that different sort of motivation to, what is my example? Who do I look to as the archetype of, this person does the same work every day so consistently, and how do I get to that level? Again, I tell stories about Mookie Betts a lot because I just had that much respect for him. When he transitioned positions twice last spring from right field to second to short, he was taking grounder after grounder after grounder. And when I asked him what the key was, he talked about how I'm working so hard. The idea is that I want to work myself to the point where I'm failing, and that's how I'm going to learn. And that's, I think, a really healthy perspective for anybody, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a scientist, whether you're a broadcaster. We all learn through failure, and I think that is now, if the Mariners are not going to sign the veteran type, the Michael Brantley type of a player, then Julio's got to be his own compass on this. And I do think that that's what I'll be watching carefully to see, is, does his work lead to more consistent results for a full 6 months?
Well, they did sign Donovan Solano, so we shouldn't get greedy here. I mean, come on,
Donnie Barrels.
Yes, he now really good, and honestly, I'll say this: when that signing was announced, I said to myself, Bob, when we next have a conversation, Bob might say, John, how different is he from what you told us about Colton Wong and Tommy LaStella? And I may say, you know what, Bob? That's a great question. Because I'm not really sure how different he is from those two players. Listen,
he's
I
older.
Solano,
I can tell you that.
He's older. Really good bat to ball. I like his game, but he is, and I mean this with great affection, he is a complimentary player. And that is what I wonder about this team going forward. Who do they have? There's an expression in hockey. Who's going to carry the mail? Besides Julio, besides Cal, who's going to carry the mail? And that's still a question that I have. I've heard them linked to different players, but the guys who carry the mail are expensive. And we have not yet seen this winter or in a while the idea that the Mariners are going to hire the guys that really carry the mail. And until that happens, they're going to – now, they were in some ways especially unlucky with some of the bets they made on players in the last couple of years. Maybe Solano's going to be different. I hope for the Mariners' case that he is. But you're hoping around the margins. And this is another move of hope and not a move of certainty. Juan Soto, I know who he is. Okay, barring injury, I know who he is. I know who Christian Walker is, and Christian Walker was also too expensive. So in this business, you can sometimes get very fortunate with low cost signings. The Padres did a year ago with Profar. I really would love to see the Mariners get Profar as well, but until they spend the money, it's going to be hard to envision a team achieving at a much higher level offensively than what the Mariners have done the last couple of years.
Well, realistically, who's out there? I mean, is it Santander, or is he too expensive? I'm just trying to figure out what the plan is here. I think we're all trying to figure out, what is your plan? I know they've been in on some players and it hasn't fallen their way. So, yeah, the effort is there, but the end result is not there. So it feels like we're headed into a season where they're just counting on guys just to be better than you were last year. Hey, Mitch, both Mitches, be better. JP, be better than you were. And they should, and you're paying them to be better. But as we've seen, that's not what that's hope. That's not a game plan. That's hope. So what do you get us? Do you have any sense of what their plan is if they're not able to land some of these on the fringe contracts that we're talking about here? Is it relying on the young guys and just, we're going to call up Cole Young at some point and maybe Harry Ford at some point, and hopefully everybody else around them is better and that'll be enough, and our pitching staff will remain completely healthy as it did last year?
That is very possible in terms of what the actual plan will be. The State of the Union on day one in Peoria might sound a little bit like that, at least the translated version of it, maybe not the exact readout of it, but that might be the translation. A couple things. if they weren't going to spend for Walker, I have a hard time thinking that they'd be able to afford Alonso, Bregman, or Santander. Santander is younger than Walker. He's a switch hitter, and he just hit 44 home runs. He's not cheap. There's in no universe should he be a cheap player for them to sign. They may try, but I just don't see that working out. If they sign him, congratulations, he'd be amazing. But I tend to think that other teams will value him more highly than what the Mariners will. That based on the Solano acquisition, it seems to me that their budget is much more along the lines of who can we bring in from another team that doesn't make a lot of money yet and use not our big pitching capital, but someone from that, or maybe someone from the farm system to do a young player for a young player trade. The Tigers have Torkelson. They also have Jace Young at third base, a lefty bat. I think the Mariners all in all would prefer a lefty bat. If the Tigers by some chance sign Bregman, then Young is available probably, and they could perhaps trade him in that circumstance. So I think that at the end of the day, the Mariners are probably waiting to see if any other teams are able to sign a big-time free agent bat that would then create a corollary impact, and then maybe an Alec Bohm is available, although I tend to doubt it at this late stage. I mean, spring training starts in less than a month. And if you're the Phillies and you believe you could win the World Series, I don't see how you're trading Alec Bohm on January 17th unless you're signing Alex Bregman at the same time. So the Mariners are in a tough spot. A lot of options have, I think, gone by the boards, and certainly Sasaki had appeal for a variety of reasons, one of which was he's very cheap. And I think that this is now not getting him shows us that really in a lot of ways the Mariners are just hoping that one of these less expensive options comes through, and hope is a pretty difficult strategy when you're thinking about competing against a team like the Yankees or the Guardians for a spot in the World Series.
Is this surprising to Alex Bregman's camp that it's taken this long? I know it's not a surprise to Bob, who I'm sure that people don't know that he has a punchable face, according to Bob. But no, I mean, is this going as planned for him? I mean, I know he's talking about possibly changing positions, but did you think he was going to go last this long?
So it's a great question, Dave. I think that with Boris clients, of which Bregman is one and Alonso is two, there is always that possibility that you're going to have a longer, protracted wait. Ha-Sung Kim is another one that maybe is an option for the Mariners at some point. But it is entirely common. You think about how long Harper waited to sign, how long last year Blake Snell waited to sign, how long Jordan Montgomery waited to sign. And by the way, it did not work out well for Montgomery. He did not really go to a place that was best for him, and he had a poor season. So it's probably a greater risk for pitching than for position players. The notion of a longer wait and what your adjustment looks like. But Bregman's the kind of guy that has always been right in the middle of the Astros identity and conversation. And so if I'm Alex, if I'm advising Alex, just knowing his personality a little bit, I think it's hard for him to walk in late. This wouldn't feel right for me. He's the kind of guy that he want to show up there on February 1st, get a good sweat going at 6 a.m, and show to his teammates why he is such a great hitter. And if he shows up on March 12th, signing a 1-year deal because his market didn't evolve the right way, that just doesn't sound like a really good recipe for success for me. So you got to, I mean, Scott is, in my mind, a Hall of Fame agent. He knows his clients really well. That's why he's been so successful. But in this case, I think both Alonso and Bregman would say they've waited longer than they should. But this is a common result for a lot of Boris clients. And I do think Alonso, whenever this thing wraps up, he should be a Met. And the fact that he's not and probably is not going to be is a disappointment, and I think something that should not have happened.
So I know we'll see where the chips fall, but where would you say these guys land? You don't think Alonso lands with the Mets? Where do you think the likely landing spot is for him? Bregman, I've heard Tigers and Red Sox feel like it's between one of those two. Santander, I'm not really sure. Where do you think are the likely landing spots for those three?
The Jays have to get somebody, right? Maybe even two somebodies. So if the Jays get one or two of the names you just mentioned, they could be a team that may be able to make a move with the Mariners, whether it's a Davis Schneider, Ernie Clement. They've got some guys they can move. And as I mentioned, the Tigers could be a fit. The Red Sox have some guys that they could move if it got to this point. We had talked before about the Casas possibility, depending on how they move guys around. Although it sure seems to me like Bregman at second base is where the Red Sox would want him to be. So I think that for the Mariners right now, unfortunately, the message is once the big guys that we're still talking about, Santander, Alonso, Bregman, once they sign, it will likely create a cascading domino effect that will free up some players and make them a bit more available in trade than they have been in the past. And at that point in time, if the Mariners, if they keep offering their pitching to enough teams, eventually someone's going to say yes because everybody needs pitching. The Dodgers, of course, are probably the only team that doesn't need a starting pitcher right now because they've got 10 of them, and they still might go out there and bring back Clayton Kershaw to give them 11. So these are unprecedented times. The Dodgers' second rotation might be better than half of the league's 5-man rotations.
It's just insane. JP, you're the man. We appreciate you. Thanks so much for the flexibility on a day that you're very busy with the breaking news. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week.
I put the tie on and shaved just for you guys, my friends. Congrats on the video stream, and it's great to see you in person.
Yeah.
And we'll say go Lions tomorrow night.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right.
We'll try to dress up a little bit better next time.
Thank you.
No, probably not. Thanks, John.
Thanks,
so
JP.
much. Thank you.
There you go. Jon Morosi with us.